Hello and welcome to the Josh Astrop podcast, episode number 125. Thank you for downloading the podcast. Don't forget, if you want to like or follow or subscribe to the podcast, then just look for the Josh Astrop podcast. It's the same across YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, Acast. I think that's the 5 main platforms we're on. Obviously, we're also available in Apple Podcasts and your favourite podcast provider. Now, this week's guest is a very special guest. I was so excited and honoured that he gave us some time to have a chat. And it's actually a Skype podcast this week. As you'll find out during this episode, he's a very busy man, and where he lives and where the studio is very far apart. So it's more or less a day's work to record an hour or two podcast. So we took the decision to do it over Skype. I'd rather that than not do it at all, for sure. But this week's guest is Mark Ormrod. Now, I knew about Mark. I read his book, Man Down. He is a Royal Marine. He was injured while out on patrol. He stepped on an IED and lost both legs and one arm, and has subsequently gone on to achieve incredible things. Now, I won't say too much. We mentioned it briefly in this podcast, and I mentioned that if you want to find more information about that incident and recovery, then the brilliant podcast Mentors for Military did a fantastic episode with Mark. So what I'll do is I'll put a link to that podcast. So rather than us talk about the same topic over and over again, if you go and listen to that, I can't recommend it enough. Great information, and that, you know, as a side note, Mentors for Military podcast is excellent anyway, Mark's episode being particularly good. So if you want to find out about that, that is a fantastic source of information, as is Mark's book, Man Down. Yeah, I won't say too much because we talk about what he's up to, what he has been up to, and what is coming this year. And excited to hear that he's working on his second book as well. I'll put the links to Mark's social media and website, etc., in the show notes. But an absolutely fascinating guy, really inspirational story, and talking to him today, this podcast, this is actually going out the day it was recorded, has given me a kick up the arse, really, to pull my finger out and get on with it and stop moaning and get up early. Maybe not 5 o'clock like Mark, because I don't finish work until 11 at night. So that's my excuse. But yeah, an inspiration to keep moving forward, keep pushing, keep trying new things, and working hard, which anyone that can help me do that, I'm all for it. So yeah, anyway, that's enough waffle up top. Links in the show notes. Let's get on with it. This is the Josh Astrop podcast, episode number 125 with Mark Ormrod. Cool. Okay. Well, I guess I heard about you through your book. Yeah. Yeah. Really good book. Yeah. It's great. And, yeah, the level of honesty and vulnerability is a thing. People don't really talk about it a lot because everyone wants everyone to be honest, and you don't want to lie, and you don't want to make anything up, make it sound better than it is. But to do that, you have to I think you have to put yourself in a vulnerable position. You have to sort of open yourself up to criticism. Mm-hmm. I think, I suppose that's something you have to do in writing a book. I mean, ultimately, you know the truth, you know what was happening, it's all about you. But it certainly rings true in the reading of it, and yeah, it's honest. It's not like Hollywood, it's like real. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes a good autobiography. That's why I enjoy podcasts, particularly longer podcasts with people, because if you're talking to somebody for an hour, for 3 hours, it's difficult for somebody to keep up an act or a facade for that long. So inevitably their actual personality is going to come out.
Yeah, and That's I'm sure I'm big into social media. I love it, and it's exactly the same there. You have to be congruent with who you are, because it must be exhausting to try and bullshit people if you're putting on, I'm a great person and I want to help people. If you don't mean it, when you get to a point where you're like, I can't do this no more.
Yeah.
You just got to be genuine. And honestly, in the beginning, I found it difficult because as a former Royal Marine, I thought you had this image to uphold of being this big, rough, tough, chews on glass and nails, don't care about anything kind of bloke. And then I was like, do you know what? That's a small part of me when it needs to be. But most of the time, this is who I am. And I just want to be out there, speaking to the world and be genuine. So it's easy, and helping people out. So it took a while to get over it, because I thought, people are going to think I'm soft and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, I know I'm not. I can switch it on, switch it off, the part of me that I need to when I need to. But I just enjoy being me and sharing that with the world.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think with the fact that social media is everywhere, obviously, and everyone's got a social media account. And if you want to do anything that involves the public, whether it's like playing an open mic night at your local pub or whether it's writing a book, you've got to involve people that don't yet know you. So the only way, or the best way nowadays to get them to know you, is to be on social media. And obviously there's so many different elements to that, like you say, if you were trying to act, essentially play a character, you just cannot keep it up. Like you say, it's exhausting, but you just can't do that forever. You'd struggle to do it for very long at all, I think. And then you meet people in the street. You're going to bump into someone. What are you going to do then? Are you going to act then, or it's just not possible, I don't think.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned being in the Marines, but what I was interested in is, I've been fortunate enough, when I was at college and I was trying to get some evening work just to make some money, I got work in a call centre, and it was really horrible and boring. Actually, it was great because it made me realise I don't want to work in an office ever again. So I learnt that lesson, so that's positive. But anyway, they ran the Royal Navy and Royal Marines recruitment phone number. So I managed to get a job doing that, and then we went down to Lympstone. We went to a couple of the Navy bases and things as well. So we did a few things. That was pretty cool. But so we went to speak to people about what it requires, what eligibility requirements there are to join the Marines, the Navy, or whatever it is. It was quite an interesting job for a part-time college gig. But I got to do loads of cool things, go up in a Sea King helicopter, went round the endurance course, obviously walked around it with a load of other people from the office. But it was absolutely fascinating, and it just gave me a respect for Royal Marines like, I'd never had before, really. And because obviously kids are ringing up saying, what's the training like? We have to sort of basically just talk through the weeks of training, but obviously having no experience of it whatsoever. So I have an understanding of what it takes, and I know it takes a lot. So I think the sort of person that wants to do that, wants to put themselves through it, because it's not the easy path, and also what comes out the other end, actually, you'd be the best source of information, but sets you up for something like you've been through. If there was a way to make somebody able to manage and cope and understand something, that might be the best training for it. The resilience, the determination, the camaraderie. It's all there.
Yeah. Do you know what I love about, I reflect on it a lot, and what I love about it the most is that you learn so much about yourself.
Right.
Incredible. We're just incredible what we're capable of doing. But for some reason, a massive amount of people on the planet don't ever have the urge to want to tap into it and see what they're capable of achieving.
Yeah.
And when you do things like that, I did it when I was 17, finished my training at 18, which is like a milestone birthday. And I was like, shit, how did I do that? I'm still a baby, essentially.
Yeah. When you think back, when I think back to me at 18, I'm thinking, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just bouncing around.
I speak to people now, right, that are like 21 years old, some young people, you know, when I work with schools and that kind of stuff, who have maybe gone off the rails or maybe are fine but don't know what they're going to do in their life. And I have to try really hard not to be like Uncle Albert out of Only Fools and Horses and be like, listen, mate, when I was 19, I was running around Iraq.
Yeah.
You're 21 and you're picking your nose and farting.
Yeah.
You know, not a clue what you're doing, but I have to try really hard not to do it.
Yeah.
But it really sets you up, especially at that young age, to know what you're capable of doing physically and mentally.
Yeah.
Then you just think, you know, I've got, you know, God willing, 80, 90 years left on this planet to find other challenges like this where I can push myself and make the most of myself and see what I'm capable of. You know, so that was the big thing for me.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think being able to volunteer to do that, to put yourself in a position where you're going to be challenged and you're going to fail, because I mean, you do, through training, you do fail tests and try something and can't do it, so you have to do more training, but you get an understanding. I would imagine that you get an understanding of, right, this is the task, I can't do it now, but I know that if I do this and this next time I try, I will be able to do it.
Yeah,
it's sort of like that learning process, and if anything, it's about that learning process that you can adapt and then overcome that problem, even if you don't get it on your first try. But you have to put yourself in that position where you're probably going to fail, and I think people are scared to do that.
Going through training is putting yourself in a situation where you could potentially fail. You know, I was quite lucky. You know, me, out of 62 of us that started, I think 12 of us made it through in one hit and didn't fail anything.
Wow.
Or didn't get injured or anything like that. So I was pretty lucky in that respect. But I always remember thinking, as I was watching guys when we were going through training that maybe were injured or maybe didn't make the grade every couple of weeks when we got assessed, they must be mentally tougher to be able to sit there and go, right, I've got a choice here. I can quit or I can go through that gop in 2 weeks again, especially when you get to the later stages with the commando tests and stuff. You know, I did them all first time. I couldn't imagine having to do them more than once. It was just awful. You know, I was running on a 9-mile speed march, throwing up while I was running, and in my head saying, if you stop now, you're going to be doing this again in 2 weeks. Pushing on and pushing on. But the guys that, you know, are unfortunate enough to get injured or, you know, maybe not pass certain points in training and have to do it again, the mental resilience that they show must be far greater than if you just make it through in one hit. You know? Yeah,
maybe. I see what you mean there. Friend of mine, Barney, who's been on the podcast as well. Actually, he went through training and picked up. I think it was a knee injury or an ankle injury, but he was out for a few months actually. And I thought that must be terrible. Is it Hunter Group?
It's company now.
Hunter Company. Sorry. So he was there watching everyone go through. People that started before him, people that started after him, getting through before him. I mean, that must be really demoralising. I think you've got to be careful not to let that bring you down.
And that's when you got to sit there, you know. And I imagine late at night when you are in Hunter Company and the lights are off and everything's done, and you're sat there and your head's, you know, you can't sleep. You're like, that's when you got to say to yourself, it's only temporary.
Yeah.
You know, just get a grip. Yeah, it hasn't gone the way I planned it. Yeah, I wanted to do it in one hit. But if I stick at it, eventually I'm going to do it. And then once I get that green beret and I'm off in my career, it's not even going to matter. No one's going to go up to me in 10 years' time and go, by the way, did you get back-trooped on exercise martial star in training? No one thinks that ever. It's just that small chunk of your life, you know, in what essentially is a much longer life.
Yeah, that's so true. It's having that it's different. You can quite easily get caught up in the moment, and right now I'm not happy, I'm not where I want to be, but if you can keep your eye on that end goal, I think that's the thing. And if you're injured, then you're rehabilitating, aren't you? You're improving, you're getting better. Also, what interested you specifically about the Royal Marines? Because obviously there's a lot of different arms of the army you can go into, and arguably the Marines is the hardest.
Right, so this is what happened to me. I don't know if a lot of people who follow me on social media or whatever have heard the story before. But I live in Plymouth, which is a big military city.
Yeah.
And bizarrely, growing up, I never heard of the Royal Marines, and my assumption, like I think a lot of people at 15, 16 years old, was that anyone that wore a camouflage uniform went to war, went into the army. Now, a lot of the guys that I went to school with that lived in my area were 2 or 3 years older than me. So I was still at school as they were finishing and going about starting their lives. And a bunch of them joined the army. So when I came towards the end of school, I thought, right, what am I going to do? I've got 6 months to these exams. Then I've got to go to uni, or I've got to join the big bad world. So eventually I thought, right, I'm going to do what a lot of my mates have done and join the army. So one of the lads took me to the career centre. Video and all the usual gump, and I took the forms back home and went to get them signed by my parents because I was only 15 and a half at the time. And then my dad told me that I had an uncle who was actually a Royal Marine. So we organised a time to go visit him. I went to speak to him. He told me about his career. He had served as a Marine and built his way up to leave as a captain over 22 years. I then went back to the career centre and spoke to the Royal Marine that was recruiting. And he sat me down and he showed me this video. And I guess it was supposed to be similar to the Army and what the Navy and the RAF do, but this thing was intense. You know, they were going by boat, they were going by sea, they were, going by foot into combat. They were operating in the Arctic, the jungle, the desert, the woodland. These guys were like all-rounders, and they were mega flexible. They did all sorts of stuff. They were ready to go at a moment's notice. And I just thought, well, if I'm going to do this military thing, I want to be the ultimate, and be flexible and have as many qualifications as I can and just be able to do anything, anywhere, at any time at the drop of a hat. Yeah. So this is the thing for me. And there was this huge thing about the Green Beret, the emphasis they placed on how special this essentially piece of green cloth is and what it takes to earn it. So that was me hooked. And I was like, right, that's what I'm doing. Got the forms, went back, signed them, put them in, and then just sat and waited for my date to join.
Yeah, and that came round quick, and you got in. I mean, how long was it between you handing in the form and then starting?
God, I think it was about 12 months.
Okay. How are you occupying your time then? I suppose you're just waiting to join, I suppose, aren't you?
Just training. You've got to do this 3-day course first called the Potential Royal Marines course, which is pretty much a 3-day ass whipping, where it gives the training team an opportunity to assess you to see if you're ready, and it gives you the chance to test it out and say, is this really for me or not, and then make a decision.
Yeah.
So that was part of the process. I went up and did that and passed that, and then got a training program which was designed to be progressive, to get me into boots and to be building up my upper body strength and my cardiovascular stamina, and I just went home and trained, and that's all I did. I just trained, running around Plymouth looking like an idiot with boots on and backpacks on.
Yeah.
Just prepping myself mentally and physically for the day I started.
So when you were growing up, then you were what, fairly fit and into sports? Were you ever in any? You weren't in any cadets or anything like that?
No, I didn't do any of that stuff. I wasn't a footballer or anything. I trained full contact kickboxing and Muay Thai from about 11 years old, which I competed at, but that was about it.
Okay, well that's a pretty good foundation. I mean, the training that it requires for boxing. I mean, that's cardiovascular wise. That's that's going to start you in a good position, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you said you got through training 32 weeks without any hiccups. That's pretty good. That's unusual, isn't it? Look, so you said 12, only you and 11 others, was it?
Yeah, 62 of us started.
Yeah.
The troop that finished was about 28 strong, but out of that 28, only 12 of us were originals, what we call originals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't, I mean, that's the optimum to go through 32 weeks without failing or any test or injuring yourself. But when you finish, you'll get separated out anyway, won't you?
You do, yeah.
So
you'll go to different units, do different things, and then you might not ever see each other again.
Yeah. It's a testament to the training, like as I say, to what sort of the type of characteristics or the type of person it requires to want to do that, and also the skills you learn along the way. That it's people like yourself, Sean Lerwell, John White, Ollie Ollerton, all of you guys that are in the public eye, but you've all got that foundation, that Royal Marine training that just seems to. I mean, I've worked quite a little bit with Sean Lurwell fairly closely, so and he doesn't stop working. Which I think is a characteristic of Royal Marines, and seeing you on social media and things, and like we say, getting up at 5 a.m, that work ethic, it's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you learn a little bit of that when you're in the Corps,
Yeah.
When you're on operations and you're basically working 24 hours a day, you sleep when you can, you eat when you can, and, for 6 months at a time or whatever, you are busting your ass. But it's just, for me personally, I don't know if this has anything to do with my injuries and, dying and effectively being resuscitated, but, you have this opportunity while you're here, and I want to ram as much as I can into my life. And when I die, and my plan, my long-term goal is to survive to 101.
Nice.
But when I pass away peacefully in my mansion, surrounded by my Ferraris and my 45 grandkids,
yeah,
I want to pass away and everyone be like, shit, that guy squeezed a lot out of his time.
Yeah.
He did a lot of stuff. He didn't sit around bitching and moaning and complaining. He got on with it, achieved a lot, built a lot, helped a lot of people, and that's the legacy I want to leave.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, you do. You only get one shot, and or maybe two in your case. But that the idea that I'm just trying to think, like, what if there is any sort of theme or through line between maybe it's sort of military in general, because everyone knows that when you sign up to join the armed forces, it's not going to be easy. I mean, everyone knows that, and obviously some areas or some careers in the armed forces may be easier physically or mentally than others. However, I don't think anyone joins up thinking, this is like the easiest choice I've got, because going down the road and getting an office job or whatever job, it is significantly easier. It's 9 to 5. You don't have anyone telling you what to do 24 hours a day, which arguably is can be stressful. But once you've been through that, I think the bar for stress and how much stress you can cope and handle must be so high, because you're doing it on a daily basis, and you're not only facing it, but you know how to work with it and get over it as well. Yeah,
and I think that, going back to maybe what you're saying about work ethic and everything, I think the military people, once you go through things like Royal Marines training, it really opens your eyes to what you're capable of achieving. Not in an arrogant way, like in a quiet, humble way.
Yeah.
You know what you're capable of achieving, but you know what it takes to do it. And that's why, Sean, Ollie, John, myself, all these other guys are willing to put the hours in, because we know what we're capable of. We know what we want, first of all. We kind of know how to get it, and then we know what it takes to go out and achieve it, and we just go out there and do it. So I've got a lot to be thankful for the military.
Yeah. I think I listened to Mentors for Military podcast. I think you did that one. So obviously they talk a lot about your time in Afghanistan and your recovery. But what I was particularly, so I'd recommend that to anybody. It is a great podcast anyway, and your episode is very interesting as well. I'll put a link to that in the show notes for this episode. But what I wanted to talk about as well is how you got into Invictus and competing.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one, that. So a lot of guys, when they get injured, I don't know why it is, but they focus on sport, like almost out the box. They're like, right, I'm not going to let anyone tell me I can't do anything. I'm going to do sport.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm not fucking interested in sport. I used to compete in Thai boxing, kick. That was my sport. I didn't do team sports. I didn't do track sports, field events, any of that stuff. And I had this real big goal I set myself in the beginning to live independently of a wheelchair and to be a full-time prosthetic user, which I achieved on the 9th of June 2009. And that was my focus, you know, and came along and my focus changed and I had to get a new job when I left the Marines, and sport never came on my radar.
Yeah.
That wasn't until last year I was sat down setting my goals for the following year, and what I generally do is I'll think of all the areas in my life that are important to me and I want to achieve things in. So with my family, with my fitness, my career, my finances, whatever it is, I'll sit down, I'll put some headings, and then I'll bang down in each heading a bunch of goals I want to achieve. And I sat in my office at home and I closed my eyes and I started just daydreaming and visualizing things. And I had this image that just popped in my head of a jigsaw puzzle. And one of the pieces was family. One was health and fitness. One was career. One was finances, I think. I can't remember what they all were, but there was one missing. And I sat there for about 10 minutes thinking, what's missing? What's the area of my life that I want to improve and achieve things in? And then it hit me, you know, sport. I'd never done any sport in 9 years of being a triple amputee. So I thought, well, I'll do sport. So I wrote the heading down and I'm like, okay, so what do I want to do? I don't know anything about adaptive sports. You know, the things I do know and the kind of sports that are available to me, I don't know anything about. You know, I'm not really the kind of person that tiptoes into things. And so I didn't want to go approach a local club and, you know, start learning, I don't know, shot put at the local club level. So I thought, you know what, I've seen this Invictus games for the last 3 years. I've seen mates of mine going out there and killing it and earning medals and achieving great things and seeing what it's done for them. So I thought, I'm just going to apply for this, you know, and see what happens. I didn't think I'd get in because I'd never done any sport before and I wasn't in those circles. I had no idea what I was doing, absolutely nothing when it came to any of these sports. So I thought that was a disadvantage. But I just thought, you know what, I'll give it a shot anyway. If they say no, they say no. If they say yes, I've got to focus and I'll train for it. You know, fortunately, they said yes. And I fought through the trialing process and made the team. You know, and that's how I got into it.
Yeah.
You know, it opened up a different world to me.
Yeah, and you did quite well as well, didn't you? I mean, silver medal, was it?
I got 2 silvers in the rowing, 2 bronzes in the swimming,
yeah.
and then the overall Athlete of the Games award.
Yes, yeah, which is not bad for your first Invictus Games.
Not bad, considering that I cuffed it and didn't really know what I was doing.
and you weren't interested a few months before. You weren't bothered.
No, not the slightest.
Yeah. So, what events were those? Sorry.
So I did. I had 2 races with hand cycling, which I did rubbish in. I really underestimated how good those guys were.
Right.
They were phenomenal at what they did. I just thought with a lot of this sport, it was brute force and ignorance. I didn't realise how much strategy and technique and all that was involved in it, and they smoked me.
Right.
All of those guys. So I got nothing in that. The rowing, like I said, I came second in a 4-minute race and a 1-minute race, and I earned 2 silvers. And in the swimming, I came third in the 100 metres and the 50-metre freestyle. Yeah. And
the Exceptional Performance Award.
Yeah, I got that at the end of the closing ceremony.
Yeah.
Which is a surprise.
Yeah. No, that's so cool, man. That's really good. It's I mean, to think that, you know, some of the people you're competing against, I imagine, have been training for maybe longer and have maybe competed at that level before. That you got up to the level, maybe not in the hand cycling like you say, but in the other areas you got up to the required level really quickly. I mean, you're still competing now, aren't you? I noticed you've been going to a few rowing camps and they look fucking horrible.
They are horrible.
Yeah, so it's you're just doing a lot of sort of interval things, are you, and 1 minute max efforts and things like that?
Not really, not at the camps.
No.
Like I say, I never thought I never sat on a Concept 2 rowing machine in my life, right? And I thought, like I said earlier, brute force and ignorance. Go backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, so you throw up and do it better than the bloke next to you.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was so much strategy involved. and like technique and any of that stuff. And so a lot of the training we do is based around that, like race strategies, special techniques to use, because everyone on the team has a different issue.
Yeah.
So the techniques you use will be different. So and working out a lot of issues. Like last year when I was training, because I sweat so much, my arm just kept falling off. Like 2 minutes in, my arm, the sweat would get under the liner, and it would slip off, and then I'd have to finish up just using one arm. So all these things like spraying deodorant on my arm stump to keep it on, and playing with different prosthetics and different seating positions, and all that came into play. So there's a lot of that involved. But then, every once in a while, it's a 4 minute max out, 1 minute max out, just trying to work on your personal best from the last camp.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and some of these problems you're encountering, I suppose, are unique, and maybe not anyone's had that problem yet. So, it's a real. I imagine it's even more of a trial and error because you're doing something that hasn't been done before.
Yeah. So the thing, when I got there and I started racing with these guys rowing, that I noticed was that everyone does everything differently. So the guy that won, his situation was, he had 2 arms and a below-knee amputation. So he put a foam roller behind his below-knee amputation so he could use that as an extra lever to pull with. Some of the other triple amputees didn't wear arm prosthetics. I did. Right. I found it as an advantage. They would just pull with one arm. Some guys wore prosthetic legs when they were sat in the rower, and I didn't. I didn't like it because it hurt. So everyone just did things individually, and I guess over the months of training, they figured out what worked best for them, what made it easier, what gave them more of an advantage, and we all just did things that suited us. There's no, you can do this, you can't do this ruling. It's just whatever works for you.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, you're still training at the moment, obviously. How does it work with the sports? Are you sticking with the same events that you've done last time, or are you trying new things?
I'm trying new things.
Yeah.
Because like I said earlier, the hand cycling, I could train 4 times a day for 12 months and I'll never be on the level those guys are at. They do it all day, every day, and they're brilliant at it. So I decided to drop that and try something different.
Yeah.
So I'm going to row again. I'm going to swim again, and this time I'm going to do shot put and discus instead.
Yes, I saw you posting some footage of your, was it shot put and discus a few weeks ago, was it?
Yeah.
That was that just sort of a feeler just to see how you get on, or?
Well, I did it because, so when I was in the military, I detested running, hated it. Yeah. I could yomp all day long. You put some weight on my back and say, like, walk this direction for 20 hours, I can do it. Love lifting weights and all that kind of stuff. So I was more power-based than I was cardio.
Right.
So I thought, well, I'm quite strong still. I train nearly every day. I like lifting weights. Maybe I could use this power to my advantage in things like shot put and discus. So I thought I'd give that a shot. Excuse the pun. But again, I didn't know how much technique was involved in throwing a metal ball in front of your face. And,
you just throw it, don't you?
I just thought, hey, just put it on your shoulder and throw it.
Yeah.
I didn't realise how much technique was involved in this stuff.
Yeah.
And how many little tips and tricks you can use to get a bit more distance out of it. Same with the discus. I only found out about a week ago that I've been throwing a discus the complete wrong. My little finger, and apparently you're supposed to roll it off your index finger, and that's supposed to be the last finger it hits.
Right.
So I've had to change what I'm doing with that as well. I found that out looking on YouTube.
So you're, I mean, it really is sort of discovering trial and error. You've got to just find all this information out yourself.
You get a lot of coaching, but the training camps are quite few and far in between. You get like one a month, and obviously I'm not the only person at them. And there's only a certain amount of coaches that can divvy their time up. So if I have any questions in between while they're on call, it's just my preference to go online and see what everyone else is saying.
Yeah.
And just try it.
Yeah, that's it. And like we were saying earlier, although it's, social media is obviously everywhere, but information is as well. I mean, the amount of anything about anything is there somewhere. Somebody's had that thought of, what if I do this, so there will be somebody that has tried that before, or hopefully tried it a few times and worked out the right way. That's one of the advantages of being able to access all the information. So when's you're going to these intermittent training camps? When's the next event?
The next camp is next weekend.
Right.
So that's rowing. So I've got a really fun-filled weekend there. And then because I'm doing 3 sports, it's pretty much in a month I'll have 1 weekend off. The other 3 weekends are taken up with training camps, and they're all over the country.
Yeah.
My last rowing camp took me 9 hours to drive there.
I think I saw you did a video, didn't you? Yeah. I thought that's and that's either side of a hard training weekend.
Yeah. That's 9 hours up on the Friday.
Yeah.
And then 9 hours back on the Sunday when I'm knackered.
Yeah.
But we're very fortunate that I've made the team, so I've got to put the effort in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. I mean, you're doing 3 events, was it?
Yes.
3. So you're 3 athletes then.
I'm what? Sorry.
You're 3 athletes then.
Apparently, yeah.
So how do you fit that into one into 24 hours a day?
We're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Honestly, it's over the years I've learned a lot about time management and how to use my time more efficiently. Because you've got to bear in mind, as well as doing this, I've got a full-time job with the Royal Marines Association. I've got 3 children. I'm doing school runs, drop-offs. I've got a small online business that I run. I'm doing my social media, answering emails and DMs from people constantly, and speaking events too, traveling around as a speaker. So I'm just trying to fit it all in, but it's done time management and prioritization, and putting the important things first, and then the other stuff can just wait.
That's impressive, man. I mean, that's several jobs. And some of them, the thing with performance-based jobs, like being an athlete of sorts, and you can see how well you're doing, and if you don't get enough sleep, or you're not eating right, or whatever it is, or you're letting stress get the better of you, that your performance is going to drop. You can see that, and your coaches can see that as well. So you've got that constant reminder of where you are and where you should be. It's not like most jobs in life where you can get away with having some off days, or maybe not do that pile of work that needs to be done. But the fact that you're combining both, a regular day job and managing everything yourself, but also you've got to be performing at your best all the time. And like you say, as these camps are few and far between, that's even more pressure to make that time count, because you don't have much of it.
Yeah, and so you've got to take responsibility for it,
Right.
And I've got a nice little setup here at home in my garage where I can train. I've basically set my life up now so that I've got no excuses not to do it all.
Right.
I've made everything as easy and efficient as I can, using technology and the environments that I'm in, where I am, what I'm doing when I'm working, and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it can become quite difficult.
Yeah. With what you're talking about, rowing and shot put, I mean, you're having to, particularly with rowing, you're having to adapt your prosthetic limbs to fit on the rowing machine, and I know you had some trouble with some lap straps and things before. Obviously there's specialised companies now that make these things and that work with you, but I would imagine that there's not many of them, and they're probably very expensive.
Yeah, I mean, with the rowing, I have to have a fixed seat, what clamps onto the rail.
Right.
Obviously, I don't go backwards and forwards. And then all I've really got to do is got a basic prosthetic arm, a body-powered mechanical arm, and I bought a specialist hand for it. It's actually designed for kayaking, but it works really well on the bike and on the rower.
Okay.
But it's not really that much involved with that.
Yeah.
At the minute, the big thing for me right now is shot put and discus is done from a seat.
Right.
So I've literally just ordered, and tomorrow I'm picking up 20 metres worth of aluminium frame. And I've got a friend who's a metalsmith who's going to build me a to spec, to the legal spec, a seat to throw from. So you got to figure. At the minute, I've been doing it from my knees. I just get down on my knees in the garden and just go through the motions. But I need to be doing it in a proper environment with the seat, with the straps, sandbag to the floor, and then going through it like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all doable and workable. You just got to either have the right people around you or just be imaginative and resourceful.
Yeah, that's it. And I think like that seat, I suppose that's why you've got so much metal, but the amount of, you sitting on it and throwing a shot put, that's a lot of potential movement and a lot of force going through. It's got to be a very stable platform, hasn't it?
Yeah, normally they get anchored to the floor.
Right.
So there are, in athletics tracks, in certain ones they have like L-shaped brackets in front and behind where an able-bodied person would stand, and it's ratchet stropped into the ground.
Yeah.
But I haven't been able to find anywhere in Plymouth that has that capability, so I'm just going to have to take some sandbags.
Yeah.
And just weigh it down and just hope it don't tip.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, you mentioned briefly motivational speaking. So you're just going through, I suppose, places that book you. Are you managing all of that yourself and planning all of that out?
No, I have an agent in London. He does that for me.
Cool.
They sort all of that out for me.
Yeah.
That's what I said to you earlier about figuring out how to manage my time, and getting an agent for me was the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So that takes the stress off me in that part of my life. Just getting the right people involved.
Yeah, that's it. And I suppose, when an agent's got contacts and knows how it works, and it can be quite a task just to arrange one sort of meeting or something. And that's taking up so much of your day that obviously the time is precious already. You mentioned the Royal Marines Association. What do you do in relation to them?
So I'm the operations assistant.
Okay.
So my boss is the operations manager, obviously.
Yeah.
He coordinates all of the events that we do around the country, the ceremonial things that our veterans take part in, the marches and parades and all that kind of stuff. We raise money, fundraising for the Royal Marines Association, the Royal Marines charity. I do recruiting. So every couple of weeks I go to Limpston when we do our training, and I speak to the recruits that are in week 28 about the charity and the benefits of membership and how we look after them and their families. And then pretty much whatever else I get tasked with from my boss.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky, to get that job. It didn't exist before it was offered to me. They created it for me back in 2010. And it's really helped to keep me in the loop with the Royal Marines and the military.
Yeah, I mean, what's the difference between the Royal Marines Charity and the Royal Marines Association? Because the studio audio works we collect for the Royal Marines Charity, but I don't know what's the difference between those two.
So the charity really is the overarching fundraising arm of the Royal Marines charitable sector, and the association is a membership-based organisation. Okay. So they've been around since the end of the Second World War, and were created as a way that when lads left the Corps, to keep them in contact with each other. And it was a place where you could go, and back in the day it was similar to the British Legion, where they'd get together, have a drink, tell some stories, be a Royal Marine again for 5 minutes, and then go back to their civilian lives. Yeah. And it's obviously grown massively over the years. We've got branches all over the world now. They're literally worldwide. And so it's more of the camaraderie and the fellowship kind of stuff, and the charity is the fundraising side of things. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting you mention the camaraderie, especially when you're leaving. I imagine that coming out of the armed forces is obviously sometimes it's what people want to do, sometimes it's not. But I'd imagine that's quite an unusual or a difficult time from being surrounded by your mates all the time, doing something that you enjoy, to being out in Civvy Street and perhaps not having qualifications that are transferable. And you hear about it all the time when people leave the Army or the Marines or the SAS or whatever it is, go to the job centre and they say, do you want to work in McDonald's? You're skilled. While you are, perhaps the most highly trained person or one of the highly trained people in the world, those skills aren't transferable, so you've got to start right at the bottom again and work your way up. I imagine that transition can be complicated and potentially lonely. So like Royal Marines Association, you can see how relevant they are.
Yeah, and I tell this to a lot of people, especially these guys that I told you I talked to in week 28.
Yeah.
You've got to be smart with your career, while you're in it. So maybe while you're serving, you want to be a sniper, right? But like you just said, there's not much call for a sniper in Civvy Street.
Yeah.
So while you are a sniper and you're at your unit and you're not on operations or exercise or deployments, go off and do some courses. Become a civilian qualified personal trainer. Do business management. Whatever it is you want to do when you leave the Corps, I would start thinking about it now from the day you pass out, if that was me. So you do have those transferable skills. And that's why, unfortunately, I think we see a lot of people that leave the military end up homeless or jobless because, for 22 years of their life, they've risen from a Marine to maybe a sergeant major who's a heavy weapons instructor. And you come out of Civvy Street, you're like, right, okay, civvies, who wants to learn about heavy weapons? Yeah. And everyone's like, no, not really, because we don't need to. And you're like, okay, so what do I do with 22 years of heavy weapons knowledge? Not much.
Yeah.
Now I've got to start again. So you've got to be proactive with your career, and you've got to manage your career very cleverly from the day you pass out of training. And I tell this to everybody, But again, on the flip side, the day and age we live in, entrepreneurship is very popular, and it's very accessible now with the internet, courses online, and all that kind of stuff. And there's never been a better opportunity to start your own business. Like Sean does with the PT stuff. He's very lucky that he's a good-looking bloke. He can do the modelling and all that kind of stuff. But he's figured that out, what his strong assets were and his skill sets, and gone out and made the most of it. Yeah,
that's true. I think he's just been working on, I think he's writing and starring. It's called David and Olivia, a really good TV show. It's on Amazon, but check it out if you can. But yeah, great example. Although I think he started his writing when he did the Haynes manual, the Royal Marines Haynes manual, while he was a PT in the Marines. So yeah, I mean, that was, maybe he didn't realise it at the time, but that was obviously giving him some skills that he then went on to write training manuals and whatnot, and now scripts. So yeah, I mean, that's a great example. You do need those transferable skills. I mean, the maximum service, is it 22 years?
It is, but you can in certain situations get extensions beyond that, depending on what your job is.
Yeah. So if you join at 18, you're retiring at 40. So you've got 40 or 50 years left then.
Still young.
Yeah, very.
Still young. That's what I mean. That's why, if you're proactive with your career management from day one, and you want to serve 22 years, at that 17-year point, 18-year point, I would start getting my head around being a civilian then. And if you want to start a business, I would start it then, because you never have as much free time as you do in the military when you're in the UK and you're not deployed. Wednesday afternoons off, Friday afternoons off. If you're not doing anything, you're not doing anything. So you could be working on a business, networking. I'd be out there, going to networking events, meeting people for 3 years, 4 years before I left, to make sure that I had a much better chance of transitioning when the time came.
Yeah, and you can see it a lot at the moment. I mean, like Contact Coffee, that's a couple of Marines that have started that, I think. Yeah. And people like Tutu Smoking Aces on Instagram, who's started out just posting pictures of himself and I think working out and obviously working hard, but then has branched into merchandise, and I think there's all like coffee and all sorts of things coming. So you can see these people that are, some are obviously still serving and some not, but they're taking advantage of both social media and the ability to be an entrepreneur. Contact Coffee is a good example. Some guys that are still serving, that are running a really good, successful coffee company, as well as a full-time job.
Yeah, and e-commerce. They don't have to have a physical warehouse paying rent, rates, and all that kind of rubbish.
Yeah,
you can get an Amazon store, a Shopify shop, or just bung a website up, put a payment method on there, and then bang, they're serving. No matter where they are, as long as they've got a smartphone, and they've got a Wi-Fi connection, they're running a business. They could be in a snow hole in Norway. If they can get 4G, happy days, they can still run their business.
Yeah, that's so true. It's it's really anything's possible now. If you've got a phone, like you say, drop shipping and all the rest of it, yeah, you can literally do it all from your phone. Well, I mean, like this now. I mean, this is this is a podcast. This will go out on iTunes. We could be doing this on the phone. I just happen to have my laptop out. It's anything's possible really. We've got the world at our fingertips.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think we've pretty much gone through everything there. Quite marine heavy, but there's nothing wrong with that, I suppose. What's on the cards for you this year? I mean, I know we're quite far through, and I know you're training at the moment. So, is that the next big thing on the calendar? Actually competing?
Yeah. So I'm flying out to Australia on the 15th of October.
Yeah.
To compete in this year's Invictus Games. I've got another former Royal Marine friend of mine who, for the last 18 months, we've been filming a documentary. So that is literally in the final editing phase right now. He's in his editing studio like 16 hours a day, syncing audio and all that stuff I don't understand and getting that prepped. I'm in the middle of writing the second book at the minute.
Cool.
So that should be, I spoke to my ghostwriter, I'm hoping to have that released and out for Christmas this year. And what else is going on? So yeah, I have a very small online e-commerce thing myself, and my brand No Limits. So I'm just trying to grow that at the minute as well.
That's No Limits. That's the name of the documentary as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Video editing is so time consuming, but yeah. No, that's really cool. Actually, as it happened, and I think Ant Middleton's book.
First Man In.
Yeah, audiobook came out today. Actually, he did the. He wasn't in the Marines as such. Did he do the All Arms Commando course? Is it or?
No, he was a Royal Marine.
Oh, was he? Oh, okay. Sorry, my mistake.
My friend Sam, who is my jiu-jitsu instructor, took him through training.
Oh, okay. Oh, is that the Royal Marines Jiu-Jitsu guy?
Yeah, reorg.
Oh, yes, yeah, that's it. Okay, oh, brilliant, awesome. Okay, so all right, then we'll just wait for your a book to come out. That's cool. I'll put the links to your website and all your social media in the podcast show notes. Thanks very much for giving me your time. I know, well, we've heard how busy you are, and maybe I need to get up earlier in the morning and fit a little bit more in. But no, thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. Your book's great, and you're really killing it on social media and stuff. So yeah, it's all good, man. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Sweet. That's cool. So there it was, the Josh Astrop podcast, episode number 125 with Mark Ormrod. What an awesome guy. Yeah, you may or may not, I wasn't sure whether to mention this, but because we did it over Skype, inevitably the call dropped a couple of times. So depending on how good my editing skills are, you may or may not have noticed that. But I'll mention it anyway, just in case you notice any slight jumps. Such is the nature of Skype phone calls, particularly ones that are like half an hour to an hour long. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed talking to Mark. I read his book a few years ago, so it was really awesome to finally get to talk to him and hear about what he's been up to, and what he's doing and how he does it. Like I say, there's some things that we didn't mention or didn't talk about, but he has appeared in other podcasts and gone into great detail. The Mentors for Military one in particular, which I'll link to in the show notes. So have a listen to that. A very good episode. But I was more interested in hearing about Mark's time in the Marines and leading up to it, and also what he's doing at the moment. I know I happen to follow him on social media, so I can see his updates, and he updates regularly. So if you want to follow him, it's great because you get regular updates about what's going on, what he's doing, the training he's working on at the moment, which is really interesting. I I mean, just follow his social media and you'll find out so much about what he's working on. But yeah, exciting to hear that he's working on another book. So I'm excited to hear more about that and get that when it comes out. Yeah, I think that's it. I think we pretty much covered everything in the podcast. But what a great guy! I was so honoured that he gave us some time to have a chat. In his busy schedule. So yeah, that was awesome. Like I say, links to Mark's stuff across various platforms, links to the Mentors for Military podcast that goes in depth into his military career. I'll put that link in there as well, and links to this podcast in general, all in the show notes. That's where all the links are, if you haven't got that by now. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for listening. This has been the Josh Astrop podcast, episode number 125 with Mark Ormrod.